I'm Jason Klom, and this is Comedy on Vinyl. Ladies and gentlemen, no particular album this week, because frankly, there's too many to talk about. The artist, Gerard Hoffnung, and my guest this week, should I call you Ben or Benedict? Do you go by Ben?
Ben is great.
Is Ben Hoffnung. Thank you so much for being here.
It's my pleasure, Jason.
Listeners to my show, who I still think are mostly American, if you've been listening for a long time, you heard me speak with David Melville of the Independent Shakespeare Company in Los Angeles about Hoffnung at the Oxford Union. It was delightful, and so therefore every time I've seen one of your father's records, I have picked one up, although, these are the same record. Hilarious. Okay, so I only have 4. I lied earlier when I said I had 5. But I picked them up, but half of the reason I picked them up is because of the distinctive autograph and the distinctive drawings.
Yeah, indeed, yeah.
I love what's on them, but boy, oh boy, it's so beautiful. Let's get into it. He passed away when you were only 4. I mean, he was so young.
He was 34 years old.
Yeah.
And I have a sister who was only 1 when he was barely 1 when he died.
Yeah.
And I was 4. But I mean, I grew up, as a young boy, surrounded by, his legacy. And it was quite a huge legacy because it comprised of so many different things. And there were his radio broadcasts, some of which I'm sure you have in front of you.
Yeah.
There were his drawings. I mean, he was really, I think if I had to say what did my father do? I mean, he did all kinds of things, but he was really a professional cartoonist. That was his kind of job. But it was really his cartoons that started coloring his life generally, and plenty of other people's lives as well. And he for instance, his musical cartoons became real concerts, very unusual concerts, which were staged in London in the 1950s, in that sort of period of post-war austerity, I guess you could say. These were just like a breath of fresh air, which I think, in fact, the first Hoffnung concert, when it was announced, it was sold out so very quickly that we were told, or I think my mother tells me that the tickets sold faster than the previous Liberace concert, which
my God,
had taken place a week before or something.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it's quite impressive.
Oh my God. So walk me through what that means. How does a cartoon become a concert? This is the stuff that's hurting my brain a little bit, and I need you to walk me through this.
Well, it's hard, really, Jason, to walk you through anything if you haven't got the cartoons in front of you.
Sure.
Broadly speaking, I think from a very young age, though Gerard he never became a professional musician as such. He achieved a very high standard on his chosen instrument, which was tuba.
Okay.
So he was a serious tuba player. But as a young boy, he played the saxophone, he played the drums, and this, of course, was in pre-Second World War Berlin. And as a very small boy, Gerard, his father, and his mother had to leave Berlin because he was Jewish, and he was from a Jewish family. Though they weren't religious Jews, they came from that background, and of course Berlin was an incredibly cosmopolitan place in those days, and they had to because Hitler was just walking down the road.
Yeah.
In fact, my father's nursery school, his kindergarten was actually next door to Heinrich Himmler's house.
Holy God.
Yeah, but anyway, that was a stroke of luck. There's a wonderful story actually, how my father was playing football one day in the playground, and somehow rather either he or one of his friends kicked the ball too hard and it went over the fence into Himmler's garden. And I know this all sounds completely bizarre.
Yeah.
But and there was a German guard, and the children asked the guard if he would return the ball by chucking it over the fence. And he refused. But at the end of the day, the ball did actually find its way back into the playground.
Wow.
But
I'm
anyway,
not, sorry, I wasn't surprised that it didn't come back at some point, but that he refused. Nazis not known for their kindness, but boy, oh boy, wow, that is a fright. I was scared the whole time. I'll be honest with you, just scared the whole time you told me the story.
well, I mean, just briefly, I mean, he then came with his family, who were luckily they were they were able just to they were able to leave without too many problems. I mean, they could actually, and they shipped all their stuff to London and arrived in it was either 38 or it was just really quite shortly before the war started. And they settled in a very nice part of London, and and Gerard became a sort of over the years became an Englishman, really. I think whether he consciously turned his back on what must have been a very disturbing part of his life, you can imagine, or whether he just really liked the way that the English did things. I mean, he became an Englishman, almost you could say a quintessential Englishman. He wore a jacket, he smoked a pipe,
Sure.
Go for long walks. He was I would love very much to have got to have known him a little bit more. Well, I'd love to have known him full stop, really. But when you're 4, you don't really know what questions to ask.
Of course. My goodness. And then to be, I have to say, like, every time I read something more about him or remember the first time I heard this, first of all, just look at his Wikipedia. It may be briefer than it should be, but it still shows a life packed. 34 years of did so much. So much was packed in. And then also, when I listened to this record for the first time, does not sound like a 34-year-old man in the least. He sounded like he had lived. And I got to say, I look up to that.
Well, I think you're right. And he did have, he had this I mean, I think the voice that he put on a lot of those interviews and things was, I think it was, I don't think he didn't speak like that all the time.
Okay, fair enough.
But at the same, but he was, that voice was an extension of his character, most definitely. And also, his cartoons were very. Well, he started out, I think, as a schoolboy. He went to Highgate School, which is a well-known private school in London for boys. And I think he was really quite a bit of a troublemaker from the very beginning. I mean, everybody liked him, but he was unable to conform in the sort of way that most children did.
Sure.
And I think the headmaster eventually found this almost too much. I mean, my mother wrote a wonderful biography, simply called Gerard Hoffnung. I've got a copy here somewhere. I'm not sure where I put it. It goes, if anybody's interested in knowing more about Gerard in detail. My mother knew him better than anybody, obviously. Sure. And she wrote this absolutely wonderful biography, and all the details of him and the sort of man he was, the sort of things he liked to do. I mean, he was a very kind man. I think that was the thing about his humor. This to me is the key thing about Gerard Hoffnung. His humor was not at anybody else's expense. Yeah. And if you look at the way most people, so many comedians today work, it's all. I mean, some are meaner than others, but even the nice ones, they're often laughing at somebody else, sure, or making a joke out of some. My father never did that. There was no malice at all. It was very, very human, very warm humor, and all his pictures, even though all his cartoons, all the funny things that happen in these drawings, they're all sort of, nobody's having a bad time, really. Right. Everyone is sort of. I mean, a lot of people in the drawings are perplexed, but they're not being bullied, laughed at. Sure. Unless they might be being laughed at, but it would only be in a very benevolent way, if you know what I
Yeah.
mean.
Yeah, of course. And that's something I appreciate tonally, because there's often, people can have all the debates they want about comedy, but, I've made my preferences known. I prefer comics who do not punch down.
Yeah,
I prefer a punch up.
yeah,
The best comics, just go back. There are people who also will profess, I love old comedy. Why don't they do comedy like they did? Well, the Marx Brothers were well known for only punching up. So just please keep that in mind the next time you try and defend some weirdo by saying they're, you know what I mean? This is the kind of stuff that drives me insane. And gosh, they're beautiful.
the thing is, you've got these records. These weren't
Yep.
records that were released by him.
Right. Yeah.
These were records that have been released from the fragments that he
Yeah.
left behind.
Yeah.
So a lot of them will be reissues of old reissues, because there was a very limited amount of stuff. For instance,
Yes.
there is very, very little film of Gerard.
Uh-huh.
There are only one or two, or possibly three short little bits. There's a movie tone recording that lasts, or is it a Pathé News that lasts about 30 seconds of him rehearsing one of his Royal Festival Hall concerts.
Uh-huh.
And then there is another a little interview about so he made some lifelike figures to stretch from one that was suspended from the roof of the Royal Albert Hall in London.
Wow.
And for the Chelsea Arts Ball. And he was interviewed there, and he's standing there with a pipe in his mouth.
Sure.
And the guy interviewing him has also got a pipe in his mouth. I mean, people smoked pipes in those days.
Sure. It's the most English thing I've ever heard, though. That is.
I think probably people smoke pipes all over the world, actually, but somehow or other, people must have perhaps per head smoked more pipes. I don't know. I don't know for sure.
And his picture on Wikipedia, the second anybody pulls it up, of course, is him smiling wryly, putting a brow up, and he's got a pipe in his mouth, because of course he does. It's great.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I do have his collection of pipes.
You do? Okay.
In a very, very large box, because he collected pipes. He had probably scores of them.
Wow. Can you think of this? Is not something I know anything about, but does he have like a meerschaum, like any
There are one or two meerschaums, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
There are some of those lovely old Swiss ones, with
sure
tassels on and great big and sort of porcelain bowl, porcelain ends, and but I think most of the time he just had a good old a little piece or something in his mouth.
That's going to be a museum piece someday. I just feel like all of his pipes would be a fantastic thing to see in a case. That's fascinating.
My mother was meticulous. Actually, starting even earlier, Gerard's mother in Berlin was meticulous because he was drawing from a very, very early age.
Okay.
So I think he started when he was about 3. And she thought she recognized his talent, and she kept all his drawings.
Oh my God!
We have all his childhood drawings as which are archived.
Thank God. Okay.
And we also have, and of course, we have all his adult. Well, we have probably 90%, more than 90% of all the work he produced, which is considerable. My mother never let anything. I think some people. I mean, we know. For instance, my father. In fact, my father met my mother at another via another artist called who you might have heard of, because he was a comical artist. He was called Roland Emmett, and I don't know if you remember. And he designed all those machines in those Magnificent Men in their Flying Machines.
Oh,
yes. They're like cars with wings that fly.
Yeah.
And he also was a very successful cartoonist. And in fact, he met my mother, who happened to be around at Roland Emmett's house. That's how they met. And in fact, I know Roland Emmett's wife. She didn't keep any of his cartoons. He'd submit them to all the periodicals, the magazines, the newspapers. But whether or not they came back apparently wasn't of much concern. My mother, or my father, first of all, he valued his own work. I mean, he didn't want to lose his own work, so he would have kept it. But my mother then archived and kept absolutely everything, which is so lucky for us, because it's all the drawings exist in the form of an exhibition that has, in fact, over the years been round the world.
Wow.
And it's now sort of, as it were, wrapped very safely in, not exactly mothballs, but it hasn't been out for getting on for probably about 7 or 8 years. But there is a lot of excitement, as I think my sister Emily might have mentioned to you, in that we are launching this digital archive, this website.
Yeah, I was wondering, she had mentioned, and can I tell you how many people I've interviewed who are like, yeah, I don't really have anything of my parents. And when I hear that, my heart sinks. And to hear everything you've just told me, you've just, this close to finishing the podcast, by the way, this close to being done doing the show, it's so nice to hear that you have as much as you do.
Yeah, well, we really do have a lot. And once it's out there, which we're hoping will be at the very beginning of the month, next month, we'll send you all the information and enjoy it and
please
circulate it, because a lot of people will really enjoy it very much. I think we've taken great trouble to have all the images photographed at an extremely high resolution. And so that people can actually click on pretty much everything and anything and see it really very, very clearly on their screen. There's lots of biographical material too, and there's lots of archival stuff. There are some podcasts. I will also send you the link. Recently, a friend of ours and another comedian who you might know, called Matt Lucas.
Yeah.
Matt has just done a wonderful podcast about Gerard and has gone into all the sort of the details of why he was funny, who was influenced by him, and his conclusion was that pretty much everybody was influenced by him, even if it was only subconsciously. The fact is, at the time when the goons were just emerging, Gerard died. Yeah. So it was very unfortunate, actually, because he was a blossoming flower about to climb. I don't know what he'd have ended up doing had he not died so young. Yeah. But he would have been doing he'd already made an impact. But when somebody dies so young, it just seems it's a bit like, it's terrible. And yet at the same time, he managed to leave quite a lot behind him. I mean, a bit like, Mozart wrote so much music, and yet he was only 36 when he died. A lot of the great composers, the great European classical composers, they all died young. They all died in poverty. They all were kind of, they didn't all die in poverty, but
sure.
People didn't live a long time. And I think actually when people are sort of wringing every ounce of energy and creativity, and they have they're so motivated, they have such a strong direction. I think no matter who they are, some people are very lucky and get through it, but other people, it's almost like they've given so much. That's kind of it, really. They just go out in a puff of smoke because it's all happened so quickly, really. And I think, and of course, I don't know if one cannot say that that's the case with anybody, but certainly my father has achieved a tremendous amount in his very short life.
I mean, if nothing else, to talk from the record perspective, if he only released, if I saw 2, maybe 3 during his life, technically came out during his life, and then the rest.
Possibly, yeah.
And the rest are posthumous. That's an extensive posthumous set of releases. So much work just sitting there waiting to come out.
Have you listened to I think some of my favorite recordings, and I believe there's I think the album that I recommend is called A Last Encore. And you might have that. I don't know if you've got that there. No.
See if I do or not.
I do released, I think, as a CD. It was available as a compact disc, and you can probably download it on Spotify now or something. But that features, along with the Oxford Union, a lot of wonderful interviews with a Canadian journalist who was a friend of my father's, who lived in London, and they used to go to the BBC, I think, once a week, And they used to just chat, the two of them. They were a double act, and my father was the mad, was the crazy guy, and Charles Richardson was the sort of straight guy.
Yeah.
And
my God.
quite honestly, you need to listen to that stuff because it's truly timeless.
I love it.
It's very, very funny, and it's wonderful. Even when I listen to it and and I don't listen to this stuff very much, as you can imagine. I don't need to. But if I do happen to listen to the Charles Richardson interviews, I mean, they are so absurd.
Yeah.
They are. I couldn't recommend them more highly. And everything is online or available. You can either you know what it's like with these things. The trouble is that over the years, there's so much stuff online that people can access, but unfortunately, none of it. So much of it is not very well laid out, and that's why we wanted to do what we've done with the website and actually give everybody the proper Hoffnung story, and not just little snippets of who was this crazy guy who drew cats and tubers and frogs and violinists and people carrying their own pianos around and all the hundreds of crazy things he did and drew. It's all very convoluted on the internet.
Sure.
Because it's just people, and a lot of people who are fans have done little tributes and little kind of mini websites, and there's nothing there that we feel is really kind of worthy of all that wonderful material. So that's why we've thought that if we don't do it, nobody probably will. So we've now done it. We're just tying up the little loose ends, and as I say, hopefully at the end of November, we'll be ready to go.
I'm very excited to see that. The beginning of November. Yes, right. What was the presence of these records in your house growing up, though? Was this something your mother wanted to play for you kids? I'd love to know when you first discovered these even existed.
I think not so much from my mother. I think more from friends of family friends. I think when my father died, I mean, my father and my mother between them had lots of wonderful friends. You can imagine they were young. They were a 30-year-old couple in London. My father being successful. My mother was charming. Gerard was charming too. He made a lot of friends, and of course when he died, I mean everybody was absolutely stunned. It was a terrible, terrible shock, and a lot of I heard stories about Gerard, about my father from so many people. People used to just tell me stories. Your father this, your father that. Oh, you should. And my mother at the time, she said, I mean, even very recently, before she died 3 years ago, my mother, she was 94, a wonderful, wonderful woman. And she used to say, sometimes when she was, we'd be sitting quietly together, and she'd say, Ben, I do wish you'd met your father properly.
Yeah.
I do wish you'd known your father. I do wish you'd known your father.
Yeah.
I think she would say, because it was obviously when you're 4, as I said earlier, you can't really get the measure of somebody. I mean, lots of his things were in the house, In fact, his his instruments, lots of tubas. There was a foghorn in the hallway.
Oh my God.
There were all sorts of things. In fact, in my nursery, I had a very large orchestral bass drum, which my father had picked up off the back of a skip in Regent Street, where the old Boozy and Hawkes showroom was, and he brought it home, and I absolutely loved this drum. And in fact, it was that is one direct influence I suppose my father had, because I am now a timpanist and a percussionist, and that was probably, if my father hadn't brought that bass drum into the house when I was 3, who knows, I might not have developed a lifelong interest in playing percussion and timpani and things. So
I was hoping you would say bass drum, frankly, just because of this. I was hoping that's what you were going to say.
Well, isn't that guy great? Yeah.
I love this so much. That's beautiful. I mean, that there were these touches of him around. It might be inevitable, but there are people who maybe can't deal with it and would take all traces of the person out who was gone, because
Yes, of
that's
course.
not uncommon. So, yeah, I mean, how lucky to have at least those bits and have her stories to get, you know, his life from her in some way.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you? How many of these records do you think you've heard? Number one.
Well, I think I've probably heard most of the stuff, you know, over the
Okay.
years.
Mm-hmm.
All of the concerts, you know, they've been recorded. I think, you know, the concerts are wonderful, and but you know, they were. I feel they were of a time.
Sure.
That's not to say people haven't done them since and continue to do them. Really,
Yeah.
you know, it's not quite the same as having, you know, the man there himself, or indeed, you know, because all the guys and even the people that he used to work with. I mean, everyone's dead now, you know, because it was a lot, because you know, they'd all be in their 90s now,
Yeah.
and so I feel in a way, but so that and what I'm trying to say is, for me, what I remember and what I continue to love are the drawings,
Yeah.
which are just you know, which are miraculous. You talk about the records. I don't listen to the records or the cassette, or they were cassettes, and then they were compact discs, and then, well, you know, the whole recording industry is in a very different place now. But you know, people who want to Google Gerard Hoffnung can stream all sorts of things. So it's all very, everything's kind of available for those who want to listen. And I would only say, listen to the Charles Richards interviews, Charles Richardson, because they are very funny, and there are lots of other things. There's also a wonderful this podcast that that Matt Lucas made, which is a long podcast. He made it with two other comedians, and they are discussing forensically Gerard Hoffnung, which is quite interesting. I mean, it's extremely interesting. And in fact, another comedian, Harry Enfield, who's a friend of ours, you know, he's also done various things, and other, not all that long ago, another comedian, Jack D for the BBC, did a documentary about the bricklayer, about that particular Oxford Union speech, which is very interesting. And what else? And and Matt Lucas took part in a play on BBC Radio 4 called Drawn to Music, which is also very good, in which he plays Gerard Hoffnung. In fact, both Matt and Harry are the only people I know who can do real Gerard Hoffnung impersonations. Very, very close to the real thing. And they all think he was wonderful, and I think he affected them all. Just as all the great comedians have affected. You know, their legacy, you know, continues to you know, encourage and mold younger comedians, who then develop their own styles. You know, that's how it is, really.
Out of what part of his life did the sort of storytelling, bordering on stand-up thing happen? How did that come?
That is a very interesting question. I don't know. I think, you know, he used to go and talk. I think he must have discovered that he liked talking to people, perhaps, and that he also made people laugh.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, he did. I can't think of any particular example. He also used to love going to horror films. And he and you know, my mum, and you know, and they'd be going to sort of you know, the old black and white, you know, films of the 50s, and possibly, you know, he loved Boris. He was a great Boris Karloff fan, and Jack Palance he thought was amazing.
Oh, sure.
And all these, you know, my mother says they used to go, occasionally he'd drag her off to a horror film, and when they got back home, he would spend the rest of the evening being one of the central characters in the horror film.
Oh no. Oh my God, I love it.
So you can imagine he was a larger than life character to have around. I think he He loved being at home. He was definitely a family man.
Mm-hmm.
He enjoyed his food. In fact, before he met my mother, he used to live in the house where, in fact, they subsequently lived in when they were married. When he first got that house,
Mm-hmm.
and his mother had died, his parents had both died. He was on his own, but he had an old German housekeeper whom he used to refer to, and whom my mother used to refer to as Old Marie.
Mm-hmm.
And Old Marie did absolutely everything for him. I think she would have done all his laundry, ironed his shirts. I don't know if she polished his shoes, because I think he actually enjoyed his shoes very much. I think he polished his own shoes, but and he had a housekeeper, because in those days, some people did. I know it seems very odd these days, but he had his own. It was just him and and she must have been. I mean, if he was, in his 20s, she would have been in her 50s, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
But she did for him, as they say. And I think when my mother arrived, it was almost too much for the housekeeper to have, another woman in the house. Mm-hmm. So she left, and my mother sort of, I think, must have taken over that role. But certainly they entertained a great deal, and I think dinner with the Hoffnungs would have been a pretty wonderful thing to have been able to go to.
My goodness. Yeah, I can't imagine.
I can't really. Well, I can imagine, actually. But I think it would have been fairly riotous. And
I would love to know, do you have any particular favorite pieces of art of his? And I'm hoping you own one of them or more.
Well, we have all of them, actually.
Sure. Yeah.
And I don't have very much on the wall. A couple of things.
Okay.
I'm trying to give you an example of some of his non-musical. I'm thinking of my mother, my wife. My mother gave to my wife a few years ago. My wife is a very, very keen gardener and a horticulturalist, and my mother gave to my wife a lovely picture of a very sweet old lady in her greenhouse, surrounded by all her plants and cacti and all sorts of lovely plants. But she is giving one of her tulips a drink out of a glass through a straw. So in other words, the straw is coming out of the glass into the tulips, into the tulip head. And it's the expression this woman has got on her face. It's just so nice. I wish I could show you. That is one of hundreds and hundreds of pictures he did. Most of his cartoons are musical, because he loved music, and he drew musicians and musical instruments. And sometimes you never really knew where the musical instrument ended and the musician began, and vice versa. But in fact, the records are the records. They are there. There is quite a lot of recorded material. But for me, from those records, it's the spoken word, probably more than the musical humor that does it for me.
Yeah. Do you have a particular favorite piece amongst the spoken word pieces?
Well, I think the Charles Richardson interviews, probably, and just him. He just talks. He just rambles on, for hours about all kinds of things. And in this very pronounced voice, once you've heard that voice, you don't really forget it. It couldn't really be anybody else.
Right. Or except for maybe it's Matt Lucas, and you might not know about.
Well, exactly, and it's absolutely true. Matt is a great impersonator. But you should listen. You might be interested to listen to that. Oh, you can't, because it's not available at them at that.
Okay.
Else will, but what you will enjoy, being interested in comedy, is the dissection of Gerard Hoffnung by Matt Lucas and some other very in the know British comedians who just
that's exciting.
Take him and actually point out that, in fact, rather than me try and blow Gerard's trumpet, you should listen to what Matt has to say. Because it is fascinating the way his humour is sort of spread into the sort of collective comedy memory of this country, really.
Yeah.
A lot of people, it's not so. It's now because Gerard's been dead for so long, and a lot of the people who listen to his stuff are also no longer with us.
Sure.
But it's trickled down through families. It has trickled down quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And there still is a definite consciousness of his stuff. And I think our hope is that we will just bring it to the fore again, because it deserves to be reissued, I think.
Yeah.
For want of a better word, really.
There are times when I've interviewed people who have grown up with famous folks, or whose folks were famous but passed away before they could get to know them. Usually the question, usually somebody's spoken to them, or they've been around long enough. They can ask. Yeah. I can ask them, hey, were they concerned with their legacy? And I do wonder if he had a concern for his legacy. And what do you think? I mean, you have so many avenues. Is that the legacy of a man who just did a billion things and hears everything? Like, I feel like that, is that the way to do him justice?
I think he was so young. I think he didn't expect to die.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, I think, having said that, I think he used to talk to my mother, and I think one of the things he did say to her, so my mother tells me, and I don't think this in any way was a genuine premonition as to his early death. But he did say to her that if anything happens to me, don't worry, because we have our friends.
Mm-hmm.
You will have our friends.
Yeah.
And whether he was saying that, it was a strange thing to say in many respects, bearing in mind what happened. But I don't think he said that with any real thought that he was going to die so quickly and so suddenly, so soon.
That's the most gentle way to deal with that subject as well. I mean, it does seem to go along with everything else you've said about him and his drawings and his humor. You know, just a gentle human being.
Yeah, he was. And he was also he used to go, and one of the things he used to do seriously, he used to go and visit prisoners in some of the roughest prisons in London. And one of the wonderful things was that when he died, my mother received an enormous amount of letters from all the prisoners who he and some of these were pretty hard guys,
Yeah.
Probably the odd murderer,
Sure.
And apparently when he used to go and see them, there were no issues.
Yeah.
He was just very happy to go and chat to them, and he did on a very regular basis.
Wow.
He also was a Quaker. He became a Quaker. I don't know if you know. I don't know in America if you know if you have. Do you have Quakers in America?
We do, but I think it's even less common than there.
He became a Quaker with my mother, and used to go to Quaker meeting most Sunday mornings.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, he drew some wonderful cartoons of the Quaker meeting in progress, which are very just little observations of people that he who used to go to the meeting. So that's interesting. I would have loved to have asked him these questions.
Sure.
And it interests me that he grew up in this. His mother obviously. I don't know a great deal about his father. His father was quite a sort of was quite a successful banker actually, and they were they didn't really Hoffnungs didn't really want for anything, and they lived in a smart part of Berlin in a very big house, which I went to visit about 6 or 7 years ago. My wife and I we went to had a few days in Berlin, which was just great. I love Berlin. And we went and I'd never seen his house, and we went to find his house, and it was a very, very huge house which had been turned into apartments.
Oh wow!
So they obviously did well, Hoffnungs, and but Berlin was not the place to be in the 30s.
Sure.
It had anything to do with being Jewish, which he did. But it's odd that he. When it's not odd, it's probably very understandable that when he came to England, and as I said, he went to a very English school, he became very English. My mother is, Church of England English.
Mm-hmm.
They became Quakers together because I think it was a religion that they could both sort of share.
Sure.
My mother was a Quaker up until she died, you know.
Wow.
My sister still goes to Quaker meeting, you know, because it's a very good, if you're gonna believe in anything, it's a very good way to do the believing, I think, because it really cuts to just it's very honest.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't profess anything that isn't. You know, I suppose you could. It's the sort of antithesis to the Catholic Church.
Mm-hmm.
And it welcomes everybody, and I think that's probably why he felt that it was an organizer. The Quakers were somewhere he could go, and there was also a Quaker meeting, 5 minutes walk around the corner from where they lived, so it was practical as well.
Have you ever performed any of these pieces that?
Yeah, I have done. I have. I conducted. I don't know if you know about the British composer Malcolm Arnold, but he was
I know the name.
Yeah, he was one of the, the late 20th century sort of composer successors, mid to late, I would say. He died actually probably 15 years ago, I'm guessing. But he wrote lots of great symphonies. He wrote all sorts of pieces. He wrote lots of film music. So he was a film composer as well, but he also was a friend of my father's, and so he wrote pieces for my father, for the concerts. I mean, really good pieces. I mean, there's one called the Grand Overture, which is for a massive symphony orchestra, but the soloists play floor polishers. So instead of there being a quartet of singers or instrumentalists, there's a symphony orchestra plus hoovers, vacuum cleaners, and floor polishers. That was one of the, and that was played very, very seriously, and that was one of the very well known Hoffnung pieces, which actually is performed on its own now quite often. Not because we don't really do Hoffnung concerts anymore. But what I conducted, he wrote a fanfare for 36 trumpeters.
Uh-huh.
Not a brass band, but 36 trumpeters. And I conducted that at the 3 years ago, I think it was, at the Malcolm Arnold Festival.
There's sort of just pure joy in just that concept, though. It's 36 trumpets. This is what you're getting to experience right now.
Yeah, 36 trumpets. A lot of trumpets. Yeah, that's on YouTube somewhere as well.
I'm gonna have to look that up. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
There's this gentleman's in a firing squad of trombones, which
that's a really nice. That actually is one of. Don't you think that's a great picture?
Yeah, I love it.
He did he did lots of trombone cartoons. But just let me interrupt myself. That picture that you're looking at, it's a firing squad. Now, a firing squad is a really horrible thing, isn't it? But Gerard has turned it into something that isn't particularly horrible. It may be very loud. You can imagine the noise that would be coming out of all those trombones. But but bullets won't be coming out of those trombones. Sound, the sound of a trombone, a brass instrument that he loved, that's what would have been coming out of those trombones. He's another lovely trombone cartoon. I suspect probably around about the same time of a trombonist, but his trombone had an extremely long slide, and at the end of the slide was attached, I think it's his cap. Because he's a busker, he's a street musician, and he's trying. And so what he does when anybody walks past, he puts his slide out so that the receptacle for collecting the money is almost in the face of the pedestrian. It's a great idea.
That's so good. I'm surprised nobody's actually built that in real life.
Exactly. Yeah.
There's only two other musicians I can think of immediately that I've ever spoken about on this show.
Yeah.
Who have a similar aesthetic. And those two would be Spike Jonze and a gentleman who called himself PDQ Bach, but whose name is Peter Schickele.
Yeah, yeah.
Are you familiar that much with either of their work?
Spike Jonze is great.
Yeah.
PDQ Bach, I'm not so much of an expert on, but there have been other people who've been very funny with music. Victor Borge.
Yeah.
He's a superb artist, very and very successful. But he was around for a long time. He built up a very large following based on his wonderful talents and his abilities, and the fact that he was able to engage so well with an audience, play the piano brilliantly, and tell jokes as well. Very good, very a lot of time for him. I don't know what other. Peter Sellers narrated a short little film, which is my father. One of his non-musical little books was called Birds, Bees, and Storks.
And
it's just a sequence of pictures of a father sitting in an armchair, trying to tell his son the facts of life. Okay, and it with little subtitles. It's very, very funny. And Peter Sellers, in fact, narrated that rather successfully, and it was made into a short little film. And in fact, I used to know. I knew Peter Sellers, because I used to play in a band with his son, Mike Sellers. We were great pals, and we used to. This is when I was very young, in my very early teens, and we used to spend time occasionally around at his father's house. I can tell you a few stories there.
I bet.
Which I won't now, because they're not really anything to do with Gerard Hoffnung. But sure. Peter Sellers was I can only say was an extremely funny man. And he was one of the just thinking of him makes me laugh. There are people who you just think of them and they make you laugh.
I'm going to need to see Birds, Bees, and Storks, because that sounds like, it must have been interesting to know that Peter Sellers is reading the words of your father, writing as a father to his children. And so Peter Sellers is not a bad stand-in. I mean, if somebody's going to play your dad, basically, in a thing.
Well, he wasn't really playing my father.
Sure.
He was just narrating well, if you can you should be able to get yourself a copy on.
I'm going to have to, yeah.
You'll find one. Yeah. You'll find all those Hoffnung books on it, because people, they've got different coloured little dust jackets.
Yeah.
They're about that sort of size. They're small. They're the sort of size of a paperback, but with a little hardcover and a little bit thinner. And they've got different names. There were 6 little music books. And there were about another 6 little sort of non-musical books.
Yeah.
He loved cats too. My father loved cats and drew a lot of cats, doing various things. In fact, he did the illustrations for another book, which in fact, I think we'll probably republish it, because once things start to kind of, we're so sure that people will love being reintroduced to Gerard's work, that they will want to see these new books, which are in fact old books, but they're timeless. That's the word, I think, that certainly with regard to the cartoons, I mean, they are timeless. They are as funny now as they were when he did them, and that is the attraction to me. I'm not trying to sort of convince people that this stuff is, that was funny in the 1950s and early 60s. I'm not trying to convince people that stuff is still funny. I just want people to have a look for themselves. And realize that it is. And I think this is the way we can do it, by reintroducing it, as a sort of digital archive. Go to, they can just spend a bit of time looking at the stuff.
I will say, as a vinyl collector, I would love to see at some point a record store day release of either something that's never been out there released, or at least a re-release of one of these classics, if only because I would like to have something new of his to hang on my wall. It's all hangable. By the way, if I could have a wall of just his records, because they're all his drawings, I would. They're gorgeous, you know.
Well, that's lovely to hear. But I think you'd probably enjoy even more. I know you have an interest in records, and that's your kind of, I guess that's your niche, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, I don't know why, but yes.
Well, they're very nice records. I mean, I find I used to listen to a lot of records. I mean, I used to have, like all of us, I used to have records. Sadly, well, I gave them all away, and I don't really have any regrets because
they're heavy. They take a lot of space up.
They take up a lot of space, and they look great. I guess if you like, but actually they also sound great. And I used to have I had a fantastic record deck. I had are you interested in recording record players as such, or?
Oh yeah, no, I'm always curious about that stuff.
Yeah, I had one of these transcriptor decks with the great big brass weights and a rubber belt. It was the same one that was in Stanley Kubrick's Clockwork Orange.
Oh, yeah.
They listened to the Beethoven, you know. I don't know. It was one of those, and I had a Shaw cartridge, and I had these, you know, a quad amplifier. If you listen to that stuff, Hoffnung or otherwise, it sounds great, and you have some good speakers to thump it out of.
Yeah, of course. I'd feel stupid if I didn't ask you maybe the first comedy record you can remember hearing as a child. I'd love to know what you grew up with, because, you know, anybody in England is always going to have a different answer than all the stuff that was over here.
What did I? Well, as a child, who used to? I mean, I suppose people who were. I mean, I think really young children, aren't necessarily particularly aware of, you know, comedians as such.
Sure.
Unless they're targeting children. But I think once I'd kind of grown up a bit, who did I find funny? Well, Peter Sellers.
Yep.
Morecambe and Wise.
Yeah.
On television. Funny enough, not particularly Tony Hancock. Tony Hancock was very, very popular. Maybe I need to give Tony Hancock another go. Who else was there? This is ridiculous because there are so many British.
Well, that's always it. There's so many.
And also there are comedians and there are actors who aren't really comedians but are funny. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're actors, but they tend to be in funny films.
Yeah.
But they're not stand-up comedians. They're not known for being comedians as such. They're known as being actors who make you laugh.
Yeah.
Which is a slightly different thing. My mind's going completely sort of.
No, I mean it's
Spike Milligan.
Spike
Milligan. Spike Milligan.
Did you ever listen to like Dudley Moore? Peter Cook?
God!
There we go.
I'm sorry. The two funniest. I was listening to Dudley Moore yesterday and Peter Cook. Yes. You know, in their various guises, all of them. Even when it started going, you know, really blue at the end. Some of that stuff I find. I mean, I have a couple of colleagues, and you know, often, you know, not often, but every now and again, we'll put on Derek and Clyde records and laugh and laugh and laugh and laugh. But if you listen to the old stuff, I mean, if you listen to Dudley Moore playing the piano and doing Benjamin Britten impersonations, and Peter Pears impersonations, I mean, it's just extraordinarily clever. Dudley Moore, I think, was one of my icons, and I just, the more if you mention these guys, I'll flag that. If you flag them up, I can tell you what I think, but I wouldn't. It's quite hard to remember funny people.
Of course. No, I absolutely get it, and honestly, it's even though I would say, I'm trying to think how many. I don't know how many English records I have. How many British records even?
Well, just name a couple, and I'll tell you if I know who you're talking about.
Let me go to my BBC section here.
Yeah.
Let me see. I know that I've got. Let's see here. All right. Let's see. No, that's not remotely English or British. Let's see here. Oh wait, where did it go? Well, we got Python, of course.
Of course.
So much Python. The ones that always stick out to me are Python, Billy Connolly.
And John Cleese and Faulty Towers and all
Sure.
that stuff. Yeah, that's all very. Faulty Towers was always very funny, and I used to watch it and I used to laugh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely.
That's the only show I can think of that's ever released full episodes on vinyl as well. You could just listen to one on either side.
But what is also interesting is how a lot of British humour perhaps doesn't go down so well in the United States. Would you agree with that?
I mean, it depends.
American sense of humour is very different.
It can be.
It can.
Yeah, for sure. There's, I'll hear some English comedians say that, Americans don't do irony. It's not true. We just don't do it in the same way or with the same frequency, I would say. But you're right. I mean, that's why I think a lot of people over here who would identify as nerds, the second they discover English humor or British humor, it becomes a little club. And so for sure, it's not nearly as widely appreciated.
No, but they'll have its clique of followers, and that's great. Yeah,
yeah. And it's always the stuff that I gravitate to the most, I think, and it's very fun to have guests come on to pick something that I didn't even know existed. Like, I don't know, somebody picked not the 9 o'clock news, and I had forgotten that was even a show, and they released a few records of that as well.
I didn't. It wasn't that funny, I don't think. Not for me, not the 9 o'clock.
Sure.
But you see, I loved the Marx Brothers.
Sure.
The Three Stooges and all.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of very, Abbott and Costello, all those guys in America were extremely funny people. Laurel and Hardy.
Mm-hmm.
Mind you, Stan Laurel was English too, wasn't he?
Right. Yeah.
He was English. But that I find they're very funny. Slapstick. See, slapstick humour is wonderful, but things that aren't slapstick can be equally, if not funnier, because they're less obvious.
For sure.
And humour is a very subtle thing, or it can be.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be obvious.
Right. Absolutely.
But it just depends what you want to listen to, I suppose, and what floats your boat. Who do I find? I'm trying to think who I find funny on television now. I guess I find Matt Lucas funny.
Yeah, of course.
When he does his impersonations and with David Walliams and the two of them when they work together, I find that very funny.
Mm-hmm.
We're also forgetting contemporary comedy, the Golden Globes, Ricky Gervais.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Now I find him extremely funny.
Mm-hmm.
I do. I mean, I find him very funny, and he's also a very fine actor, actually.
Yeah.
And he's done some serious stuff as well. And so I've got a lot of time for Ricky Gervais, and there's a load of stuff, I guess. But anyway, good.
Let's do this. I would love to please. First of all, thank you for doing the show. That's the big thing. Second of all, tell people what the website is going to be. If there's any other, I don't know if there'll be any social media, but at least what the website will be. Hey everyone, this is just a quick note. The date that the website is going live is actually the 8th of November. So just keep that in mind. Thanks so much.
There will be social media attached to it.
Okay, good.
And the website will be launching at the beginning of November, and it will contain a drawing, lots of drawings, biographical stuff, interviews, little shots of a few little bits of film, links to podcasts, links to any radio programs that we can access, because there have been quite a few programs about Gerard, a number of programs, and really anything Hoffnung. And then there'll also be a shop where you can buy your favorite Hoffnung pictures. And books later.
Will that be hoffnung.co.uk? What's the address going to be?
The address is going to be gerardhoffnung.com.
Okay, perfect. I will make sure to note that.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
If you could release it perhaps a little bit nearer the time. Well, it'll be after, hopefully, by the time you very kindly said you can put this out a bit later. By the time you do that, it should, touch wood, it should be out there, so
It's exciting.
I'm guarded because one's can that's the absolute intention.
Sure.
And there are various meetings happening between now and then, which are just tying up the belts and braces and just getting everything absolutely ready to go.
I'll say, as an archivist myself and as a comedy appreciator and an art appreciator, this is the kind of website that needs to exist more often for people's work. And I'm very excited to see it when it's out. This is the kind of thing.
I can't wait for you to look at it and let us know what you think.
Absolutely. Please.
Good. Great.
And again, thank you so much for doing the show.
It's absolutely been my pleasure, and I'm sure we'll speak again.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you all for listening, and as always, have a good thing. Comedy on Vinyl is a production of StolenDress Entertainment. It is produced by Mike Warden and is hosted and edited by Jason Klom. Our theme song was composed and performed by Richard Levinson. You can email us at podcast@comedyonvinyl.com. You can also send snail mail to P.O. Box 725165, Berkeley, Michigan 48072. Subscribe to Comedy on Vinyl on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and anywhere else you can find podcasts. Give us a 5-star rating and write us a review. It helps. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Comedy on Vinyl, or find everything in one place at comedyonvinyl.com. A major portion of Comedy on Vinyl has been underwritten by Stand Up Records. Please visit standuprecords.com for all your comedy needs, and tune in to the new Stand Up Records channel available on the Roku, where you can also find select episodes of this podcast. Visit StolenDress.com to listen to our other podcasts, watch videos, and imbibe freely of our multimedia content going back 15 plus years. StolenDress Entertainment.
Hey, it's my turn.